All right, hi everybody, Chris Petri here. Thanks so much for coming by. We have a great video for you today. We're actually going to cover the two main techniques and methods of watercolor, the Alla Prima method and the glazing method. These two methods are the main methods that all professional watercolor artists use, even beginners, intermediate artists, as well as the top professionals today, and even the old masters that painted many hundreds and thousands of years ago. They all basically use one of these two methods, the Alla Prima method and the glazing technique. Basically, we'll cover here how you're going to do each one, how it works, and the main goal here is for you to learn how to do each one independently. So you're going to practice each one of these methods independently from one another, and then eventually after some time when you memorize how to do each one, then you're going to use those in your main techniques and your main methods of your watercolor so that you can come up with some beautiful results. So I know you will create some absolutely incredible paintings by just using these two style techniques that we're going to cover in this video. So stay tuned. We'll be right back and we'll get started, okay? We'll be right back. Okay, everyone, thanks for coming by. We're going to get started off here with, we're doing some new extreme beginners videos. We're trying to keep everybody that's just starting out here on my channel. If you've stopped by, this is Chris Petri. I'm really grateful that you're coming by my channel. It's all about watercolors here. We do everything in the watercolor medium. You know, sometimes we'll do a little variation. We might use some ink and wash. We might do a little bit of pen and wash. But everything really watercolors. So if you're really enjoying watercolors and you want to kind of stick with that, or if you just want to, maybe you're an oil painter and you want to learn some techniques on watercolor, this is a great channel to come by to just visit in, and you subscribe. This way you get all our videos each week as they come out. I'm making new videos each week, new content. So all my work is always fresh here on YouTube. I'm always doing new things, and again, glad you're coming by. So for the extreme beginners, I always want to kind of start off. I don't think I've touched on this yet, but I might have talked about it, but I really want to make it real clear so you just have a really good vision going forward for your watercolors. So usually when you're going to do a watercolor painting, you're going to sit down, you have a photograph you love, you have a nice scene you're sitting in front of. Maybe you're in a park and you're maybe going to do a drawing and a painting in a park of a beautiful setting. You might see like a pond or some little ducks walking across the grass, whatever it is you're going to paint. Doesn't matter. You could be working from your iPhone, your iPad, your computer, whatever you're working from. When you're doing your watercolor painting, drawing and painting, you can do basically two techniques that are really the main techniques that all watercolor artists will use. And you'll see if you go and you look on YouTube and you search out all different kinds of watercolor artists and you're watching them all paint, they're usually going to use one of two methods. So usually they're either going to go with the number one, the glazing technique, which is basically, not to make things complicated, but yeah, each watercolor artist will mix their techniques around and do different things when they're painting a painting. I give you that. But for the most part, you will see kind of predominantly two techniques. One is called the glazing technique, and the other one is the Alla Prima technique. We're going to cover in this video what these two techniques are, how you can use them, and what I say is, from my perspective, I think, and I try to encourage all of you, try to learn both of these techniques independently, and if you learn both independently from each other, eventually you'll use both of them all the time, and you'll mix and mingle them as you need to, as you're doing your paintings, which will give you a huge advantage. Some people might learn the glazing technique, and that's all they use, and that's all they do. And that's fine. I'm not complaining if anyone's going to just take one technique and run with it and just go with it and not do anything else. But you'll find all the real top pros, they're using glazing and Alla Prima all the time within their paintings. But if you're just starting out, you can practice each one of these techniques individually. And then once you practice them individually enough, maybe for a year or two, then eventually you'll be able to use them interchangeably. So you'll be using them interchangeably at any time you want, and that gives you a huge advantage because you'll see each of these techniques, either the glazing technique or the Alla Prima technique, have their own advantages and give you certain things that will give you a benefit when you're doing a painting of a certain type. So you'll be able to figure out when each of these techniques might be better to use. But if you learn them individually first, and then you can blend them together for your technique. Or you just might want to stick with one and say, you know what, I'm not ever going to do the Alla Prima technique. I'm always going to do the glazing technique. Or you might say, I'm only going to do the Alla Prima technique every time I paint, and that's fine too. But you will find that as you're in your painting and you are painting a painting, let's say whatever style painting you're painting at the moment, you might find that you might be using a little of both of these because they're sort of interchangeable, but you will notice there are some differences, some major differences between these two. Let's figure out what they are. Okay, so the first technique we'll start out with, let's start out with the Alla Prima first. Then we'll move into the glazing technique, but the Alla Prima is really more all at one time. That means you're just going to go into your watercolor painting and paint everything at one time. You're not going to be worrying about letting things, let's say dry and doing large washes over the whole paper. We'll get into the two of these, but let's just say right now for the Alla Prima, let's see what that is. So let's just say here I have a, I'm just going to do a simple, maybe I'm going to do maybe a palm tree. So I'm going to do a palm tree here. So I'm just going to do a palm tree Alla Prima, and let me write this right down at the bottom. Take some notes if you can. If you don't like taking notes, I understand. You don't have to worry about that. But if you can, sometimes it's good to. It's up to you how much detail you want to really get into. But even just watching this video, you'll learn a lot from it. And then you can also even write it on the bottom too. We could just put down, right on the watercolor paper, Alla Prima method. And this is something where you can take this painting you do, as we're working on it here, you can join right along with us. You're doing it with us here. We'll do this painting, a palm tree, in the Alla Prima method. And then as you do this, I think I just was a little bit out of the screen there. I apologize for that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get that. Okay, so that's on the tape with magic marker, and then I put some Alla Prima method on pencil on the paper, on the watercolor paper. So you can actually, once we're done with this exercise, and again, you're doing this along with me here, you stop and start your video as you need to keep up and do everything as we're going. And then you can, and then after that, at the end of this video, or when you're finished with both of these paintings, Alla Prima and the glazing technique painting, then you can set that in a folder. Set it by your art table, wherever you have your art supplies. If you put your art supplies in a bin in between when you're working once a week or every couple of weeks, or if you're working every day, you might have it on your desk, whatever it is. Maybe you keep these two paintings as a reminder that you're going to be using mostly one or the other of these techniques, and then you kind of know, okay, maybe this painting, let me look at it, let me look at the picture I'm working from or whatever you're working from and say, yeah, I think it's a better painting to do in the Alla Prima method. So we'll talk about that in a little while, but right here, we're going in and we're doing I'm doing a contour drawing basically, and it's a simple tree here with a little shadow underneath the tree, and it's a palm tree, and we're having a good time at this, and it's real simple kind of, right? We're just doing a trunk of a tree there. Maybe there's a sidewalk over here kind of trailing off into the distance, and we can maybe do that. And maybe there's a sidewalk here, and maybe there's some grass over here. So maybe this is the sidewalk. I'll put a couple lines there for the sidewalk. And then we'll just do a couple indications of a palm tree like this. Some branches and then some lines for the palms, just so we'll do this in the watercolor paint, so we don't have to draw in every detail. With a pencil here, we're just using our pencil to get the general idea of where the branches are going to be. Does that make sense? So I'm just getting the basic flow of the branches as they go around on this palm tree like so. And then from there you paint the rest. So you're going to paint most of it. You're not really going to draw a picture of a palm tree and then fill in the pencil areas where you've drawn. You're just giving yourself some basic general idea of where things are. And that's about it. And then there we go. So we have a nice palm tree here. And we're doing it in Alla Prima all at one time. We're painting this whole painting in one time. We're not doing any kind of overwashes or anything like that. We're just doing this all at one time. Let's get our brushes here. We have our paints ready to go. So I'm going to clean up my palette a little bit maybe. It's always good. It's always good to remember to keep your palette clean. Always wash your palette up a little bit. You have a paper towel. You go in. This was leftover paint from my last video. So I'm going to just clean up the palette a little bit, wipe it up with a damp paper towel. This way our new colors we're going to mix are not going to be tainted by muddy looking paints. And there we go. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but enough where the majority of the paint is removed. Now we have our brush. We have two brushes. This comes with our paint set. As you know, if you've bought the Prang set, which I think is a great bargain for $5 or $10, you get a beautiful watercolor set. Semi-moist paints. You have a water spritzer bottle. You spritz these paints 5 or 10 minutes before you start painting, and they juicy up nice, and you have plenty of gorgeous washes of color and paint. So again, this brush comes with the paint set. We can get some really nice fine details. We'll use this. I'll put this over here. And then I have another additional brush. I like to use the number 6 Simply Simmons. And this is just a real nice brush. I got this online too for $4 or $5. It's a bargain. And we'll continue on here. So the idea is we're doing this all at one time. So let's get some blues and greens, a little brown, a little orange, a little yellow. So we'll mix some warmer color over here. And then some of our blues. We have like a green, like a viridian green looking color. We have some nice beautiful looking blue here, like sort of like a turquoise blue, and then we have something that looks a lot like a cobalt blue or a French ultramarine blue, like this. So you'll notice these do mimic the colors of like the popular palettes you'll see out there that most people use online or professionals, so forth. All right, so we're going to get a nice gray color if we add a little green, brown and yellow and orange over here. Then when you mix some of that blue into that, you get a nice grayish color. So that's what we want to do. Let's get a little grayish color here. And this is what we're doing. We're actually we're painting this all at one time. So you can always, I like to hold a tissue in my hand. You can rinse your brush off and dry off a little bit of water on the tissue. So once you rinse off your brush, you have a clean brush, but you have a lot of water on it. You take a little bit of water off it. Maybe just a little bit of water off it, and then you can kind of get a lighter wash going like that, so you can lighten up. So if you want to lighten up a wash, just remember you rinse off your brush, dry it off on the napkin or sponge or tissue like I'm using here, and then you can get more of a little bit of green up here. You can get more of a lighter wash as we go. Like that. And let's make that a grayish color here too. So, and I'm going to make this a little wider down here. You can, if you see something that you've drawn in pencil, but you need to go a little larger on something, you can just paint it. So I painted right over my line and made something a little larger than I need to, or a little larger because my pencil line was too thin. I made the trunk of the tree too thin down here. So you can paint things in as you go. Okay, so we're moving right along here, and again, we're painting this all at one time. We're just starting in a spot, the bottom of our tree trunk, and we're going as we go. We can add a little orange maybe in there, a couple little spots of color, interesting color. And let's get a little darker, maybe a purplish blue. So I'm going to use some blue and purple. And let's have a little shadow there. And maybe we'll even add a little bit of turquoise green to that shadow color, like that. And that'll be the tree shadow. You don't have to, shadows are usually very free looking, right? So we do that. Just like that. And that will be our shadow for our tree. And we just remember the shadow is very dark, and it gets a little lighter as it goes further out. So your shadows will get lighter as they go away from the subject that are casting the shadows. All right, we are in good shape here. Look at that. We already have got a beautiful start to our tree, our beautiful palm tree. Oh, I'm excited. This is great. Are you having fun out there or what? Palm trees. Hey, when you think of palm trees, don't you get excited? It's like tropical vacation kind of a feel. Maybe you live in an area where you have palm trees. There's a lot of beautiful places all around the world that have palm trees. So maybe you're used to seeing these, and you'll really do a great job of doing palm trees because you kind of are very familiar with them just by the fact that you see them all the time. You'll have an easier time painting them. So again, now I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter wash here and then go over with it and just a little more, put in some colors. So I'm going to, again, dry off the brush, pick up some green, like that. Maybe I'll splash a little bit like that. Maybe a little bit of yellow. Make a little bit of a yellow color there. And I'm having a good time with this, not stressing at all. Just like that. And then we will use our finer brush to get some of those finer needles. And I'll use some brown mixed in with the green a little bit just to, I can get some pretty good fine lines with this brush too. It still has some really good fine hairs on the brush. Sometimes if you use your brush a lot all the time, it tends to wear out the points off the top of the brush. But these synthetic brushes, the points last a long time actually. More than like a fancier brush. If you buy an expensive brush, they don't last as long, the hairs on the brush. So that's a good thing actually. We can get more use out of our inexpensive brushes here. And we're just going to do the same deal. Like that. Have fun with it. Don't worry. Don't stress over it. And you can see I'm just having a great time. I will take a break in just a few minutes because I'm starting to get a little tired and maybe losing a little bit of focus. And that's the point. If you don't lose focus and you have a great time with concentration and you don't really get fatigued that easy, then you can keep going. I tend to need a break every 15 or 20 minutes. Otherwise, I start thinking about something else or that I have to clean up and do the laundry or something, and all of a sudden I'm not paying attention to my watercolors here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Pick up some more. So I just want to get some splashes on here. Okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to keep going and it'll get messy. All right, let's take a quick break. Hey, take a break too. If you need a break, relax 15 minutes. Maybe you're going to go do something. You have a chore to do quickly, or I'm going to go check the laundry. I got some stuff in the dryer. What else do we have? I have some YouTube videos on my favorite YouTube channels I like to watch with news and kind of keep up on the news. So, and the current events. So I do lots of things at one time. And we will come back, though, in just 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll keep working, okay? All right, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. and we are having fun here. We're doing a palm tree, and we're talking about the Alla Prima method. If you're a new beginner in watercolor, hey, this is a lifelong fun hobby you're going to have. It's going to be a great hobby, a fun hobby. You can take your watercolor paints on vacation. You can take them when you do a little weekend getaway somewhere, and you can paint little scenes of the places you're looking at and seeing when you're on your fun getaways and things. Or you can do things around your house, in your backyard, your apartment. You can paint things. You can paint anything. You can have it set up so you have a quick little go bag, a little duffel bag with some paints, a brush, and some paper, and you can create artwork anywhere you go, anytime you want to go. Watercolor medium, what makes it great for me anyway, what I think one of the greatest things about watercolor paint and the medium of watercolor is it's so you can bring it anywhere you want to go. You can travel with it, you can go anywhere with it, you can break it out, and in 5 minutes you're doing a beautiful painting. You can wrap it up and you're done, and you can go somewhere else. So other mediums, it's a little tougher to do that. And also watercolor medium, you can work in any kind of situation, whether it's hot, cold, indoors, outdoors. It's a great medium. So I'm glad you're working in watercolors, and we're having a lot of fun here. I'm so excited, and we're giving you the whole enchilada here of information so that you have it all. So again, we're talking about the fundamental basics of watercolor. You've got two methods basically you're going to use when you're a watercolor artist, and that's really it. It's that simple. Two methods really, basically. Your Alla Prima, which we're doing here, you saw we're starting out and we're just painting a tree and a scene, and that's all. And that's Alla Prima, all at one time, all in one go. So let's just add a few more things here. Maybe you can always go back in with your pencil and add a little branch or something if you want to add in a little more subject matter to your watercolor painting. You can do that. You take your pencil, you draw and sketch in a little thing that you left out or you forgot about, or maybe something came into the scene that you're painting or whatever, or you want to add something, you just go for it and do it. A great thing too about watercolor, you can add things as you go and you don't have to worry at all. So let me just add this in, and you can see I'm picking up all the colors we've been using, the browns, the yellows, the oranges. That's over here, brown, yellow, orange, and then we mix that with some really nice blues and greens, and that gives us our grayish colors, which look really good. And let's do that. Let's get some greens and blues going. And let's do that. And you can do some splashing as you go. We will do more splashing as we go here. And then we'll do some more of this. You can load up your brush. You can load up your brush with color and water. Have a little bit of fun. Maybe you have a little drip spot you want to have there in your watercolor. You just add some extra water like that. Let it flow on the paper. And then you can blot it up if you want to. And we're going to continue here. So again, we're painting this all at one time, this beautiful palm tree here. Now what I'm going to do is, you can kind of see these washes are starting to lighten up and dry. Let's take our brush that came with our paint set. We'll wet the brush. Let's see if we can get some good points on here. Let's see some. We're going to mix up some green too. Let's mix up some green in there. Okay, so I roll my brush around. If you roll your brush and you spin your brush in your palette, you'll tend to get a better point on the end of your brush. Let's see how that, yeah, it works good like that, yep. And that's all you got to do. And then this way we have some extra very fine pointy palm needles. Like so. You don't have to do them everywhere. Here and there is better. You wouldn't want to just do 50 of them like this, 1, 2, 3, 50, 20, 30, 40, 50. Maybe you do like 1, 2, 3, skip a spot, do another couple over here, skip, leave some, don't do any over there. That is what looks good, is when you kind of make things not so predictable. kind of mix things up all the time. Think of mixing things always and changing things around. And we can go with a little darker blue over here. Maybe there's some shadows under here. And you can do some shadowing. Do some purple and blue and get some darker shadows under your couple splashes. And that adds to some excitement there. There's a little bit of shadowing. The darker shadows that you have on your palm tree. And that looks absolutely wonderful. So look at that. We're doing the Alla Prima method. Everything at one time. We're just painting this whole scene at one time. We're not doing any overwashes and painting everything with a light blue or a light gold or nothing like that. That's what we'll do on the next painting. This one here, we're doing just everything at one time as we go. Now, we're just going to zip along here. Let's not take too long. I'm going to use some yellow and some green. And we'll make some grass over here. So I'm just going to make some grass color. I'll put some of the grass color there. And some blue along with that. Splash on some blue onto the grass. Maybe some yellow, maybe some more yellow. And then over here some more greens and yellows. We're going to just add some, scrub on some paint there, add some blue in it, purple, maybe there's some other shadows from some other area with something else creating shadows that we don't see. There could be something over here on the right side of the painting that we don't see, that's outside of our rectangle, that could be casting a shadow. So you can always sometimes do a shadow across this way with a little blue. There could be a tree over here, on this side over here. So you can mix and mingle some things around. There's some more. This is more grass. There's grass over here, like so. Yellow, green, some splashing. And there you have it. And we have a sidewalk here. And there's a little bit of some sidewalk. There's some segments in the sidewalk there, like that. And let's leave that just the background. We don't have to let's not get too concerned with the background. Let's do a little sky wash. And again, Alla Prima, you're just going to do your sky last. Be very careful though. You don't want to get too much mixing and mingling of your sky wash into your beautiful palms that you just created. Does that make sense? So when you're doing your sky wash, if you're doing Alla Prima method, so the Alla Prima method is you're doing everything at one time, you're painting the whole scene, but you're not necessarily, you're probably leaving your sky wash for last if you're doing Alla Prima, because the sky wash is maybe not as a prominent feature in your painting, but it is there, and there's some color in the sky, and you want to get that in. But this is a point where you wouldn't want to take a lot of sky wash and blend it into your palm tree. You want to just gently move some of your sky wash colors in between the leaves and the palms and the needles, just so you can kind of have that feeling of, yes, there's a sky back there, and there is some sky wash, and it's meeting up with the, but it's not where I'm just haphazardly painting wash all over the palms. That would ruin it. It would probably smudge everything. You don't want that. And you can also tap up a little bit of paint off your sky wash. If you find it's starting to reactivate the paint you already painted, does that make sense? You know, keep an eye on things. If you see some things getting a little out of control, you can always get a tissue and blot up some paint or some color to, you know, make things look a little better. You're going to need to use all your resources you have. You know, you have tissues, you have paper towels, you know, you can use these things to help you as you paint your painting, and you keep an eye on things. If you have to blot up some paint, some wash, you do it. And there you go. There we have it. Maybe a couple more splashes, maybe there, here and there. If you don't like a couple splashes, you can lift the ones you don't like, leave the ones that look better, and you have it. All right, beautiful. This is what we were looking for. The Alla Prima method, painting everything at one time. You're generally going to start with your prominent features in your painting, a tree, a car, a building, whatever it is, and then you work from there, and then you do your supporting actors. Let's say if you have this is your movie you're making, this is your play you're creating, your tree is your main actor, and then when you're doing that, yes, you can, at the end, you can put in your, some supporting actors and actresses around your painting, but your main actors you're going to put in first. Alla Prima, you're doing it all at one time, so you're going to do all your most important information first, your subject matter first, then you go in and you add in your very minimal touches of your sky wash, or you might have some other information in the background you can add in. But for the most part, I'm happy with this. I think it looks good. And I've kind of got the point here to ensure that you understand there's the two methods. This is the Alla Prima, where you're just starting out painting your main subject matter. And then from there, you can go on to, we'll do the next painting, which is the glazing technique, and you'll see how that differs from this one. So if you practice them separately at first until you get a good handle on each one, then you can interchange them both. I hope you'll stick around for the next part. It's going to be just in a few seconds. I'm going to take another break. We'll get the next side of the painting prepped, and then we'll get going here. Okay? All right, we'll be right back. Okay, hey, we're back here, and I'm going to actually walk you through what I do here on my art table, so you can kind of see some of the inside information here of what I'm doing on my channel here and what I do on my work table and so forth. This might be interesting for you. You can always fast forward if you're not interested in what I'm doing here as far as adjusting my paper and what I'm doing. But, I don't know, maybe some of you want to start your own YouTube channel. And if you do, you'll have to deal with these kind of things that I'm dealing with right now, which is, all right, now I have to reset up my setup here. This painting is completed, so I'm just going to lift up my palette, and I'll move that out of the way. And what I'll do is sometimes I will mark with my pencil on my art table right exactly where my other painting was. So it was right there, and it was right here. And this way I know I set up my camera to paint this section with the palette here. So now when I lift up things and I go to put them back in place with a fresh piece of paper, I'm right in the same spot I need to be. So I'll just lift up the tape here. So now I'm just going to peel off the tape. I'm lifting up this paper. I covered this side of the paper, so I have a fresh, clean piece of paper over there. And what I'm going to do is transfer this side of the paper over to the right, and we'll see how that goes. So basically I'm going to remove this tape from this paper here. And this is stuff, again, if you want to do your own videos and or if you're just working in your studio and you want to kind of see what I'm doing here, I sectioned off my paper. So if I only want to use half of a really nice piece of paper to do a painting, I just cover the other half with a piece of scrap paper and then tape it down so that I can paint this side of the paper. And then I can just lift it up and I have the other half to work on. You could just as easily trim it before you start. That's also a possibility. I could have left this all on the same screen and not even done any of this moving around of things, but I thought I would do that. And then I'll just take I'll take a T-square here, and I'll find that pencil line I made before, and then I just put my T-square on that pencil line like so. And then I just do a pencil line across like that. And then I'll just trim this one here, and this will have for our, you could have this in a little manila folder if you want, or you could just put this on the side of where you work for your art table, or wherever you work, however you do your artwork. You keep this close by and you say, this is my Alla Prima method. And when you look at this, you'll remember back to how we did this. We painted the tree first, got all the details of the main subject matter, the palm tree, and then we just added in our sidewalk and grass and some sky wash behind here. But it was all done at one time. We didn't do any kind of fancy glazings or over washes. And so that's the Alla Prima method. You just start somewhere. The main part of your subject matter, you start with usually the darkest darks or the medium tones, and you just keep working, and you eventually finish up with your lighter washes. So we'll set that aside. And now we'll bring this over here, and maybe on this we'll get a better, maybe we can zoom in a little more. Let's see how we have this here. Let's see how much I can zoom in. All right, that looks pretty good. So here you can see I zoom in a little more. I get a little more interesting subject matter in the camera. And we're going to do what we always do. We'll take some artist tape. I use the manila looking, it's the like a light tan manila artist tape for the camera when I'm doing videos, but you can really get some great artist tape at the big box stores where you buy all your paints and hardware and all the things you would buy. The big box stores have these trim tape. So this is painter's tape. You get it in the painter section of the store, wherever they sell the paints. You just go there and you'll find there's a big rack of all the different kinds of paints, and they have this really wonderful painter's tape, and it's green. They also make it in purple and yellow, and you just have to really look at it closely because sometimes some of them might be more tacky and might rip up the paper a little more. So the green and the yellow and the purple are the softer tape that's not going to tear up your watercolor paper. Just for a note of, this is the purple tape and the green, and there is a yellow tape too. I don't think I have any close by here, but yeah, the green and the purple or the yellow works great. And this is 3M tape, and also frog tape. There's another brand called frog tape. I think this is the frog tape, the green, and 3M makes the purple, and I think the yellow, which are excellent tackiness, perfect for taping up your watercolor paper to make a nice border around your paintings, and it won't tear up your paper. So we're going to continue. I use the manila tape because it looks better on camera, less distraction to you. So I try to make my watercolor videos look really good for you, so you're not getting distracted by different color tapes and all that. So this is what we have here. And now we're going to do the glazing technique. So we'll start out by saying that, again, there's two different types of painting techniques for the most part in watercolor. You're either going to be doing Alla Prima or your glazing technique, but once you get used to both of these techniques, you'll use them interchangeably, which will make your life a lot easier as a watercolor artist. So please know both of these and know how to use both of them. And eventually, again, after a year or two of using both of these separately, purposely doing them separately, eventually you can amalgamate them together, and it'll work great for you. You'll have so much more fun, and it'll be a lot easier to paint watercolors. So now we're going to do the glazing technique. Let's do the glazing technique. And we'll put down here on our paper. Again, we can save this paper and say, okay, this is the glazing technique. Glazing technique. And then we have this, we can save this for ourselves. We could put the date, 2022. All right, now we'll try to figure out something. You know what, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to see if I can come up with maybe an interesting painting idea quickly for this one, for the glazing technique. I already have a few ideas, but let me think about it for a second or two, and I'll come back and we'll start our glazing painting, where we're going to use the glazing technique, and you'll just enjoy it because you're going to see the difference between the two. We just did the Alla Prima with our palm tree. Now we're going to start our glazing technique. Okay, we'll be right back. Hey, thanks for coming back and sticking with us here. I'm really proud of everybody that you come each time to the new videos, and you're watching, you're learning. That's what's going to really get you ahead in your watercolors. And again, watercolor is the greatest medium for painting. You can take it anywhere you want to go, vacation, getaways. You can take it out and about anytime you want. You put it in a backpack. You can sit with it in your lap, a little sketchbook, and you do a little couple sketches, and you can paint. It's so much fun. So you're always going to have it with you. You can do it anytime you want. If you get bored, if you go on vacation, if you visit with family and you're getting bored, you can do some drawings or sketches. You have a sketchbook with you all the time. Art is such a great thing. Watercolors are phenomenal. I hope you're going to keep going with it, stick with it, and it gets easier as it goes, obviously. So if you're just starting out, you're an extreme beginner, things are going to be a little tough. You just have to deal with it. You're going to have to go through some lumps as you get going, but once you get started and you're building up all your momentum, you're learning more information all the time, it's going to actually make everything easier for you, and you'll understand it a lot more as you go. So we're doing the glazing technique we talked about before in this video. I wanted to make sure, starting out, if you're new at watercolors, you're going to have basically the two methods, the glazing technique and the Alla Prima. We just did the Alla Prima. We demonstrated that with a palm tree. You just paint the palm tree all at one time, which means Alla Prima all at one time, and then you have it, and then you just add in whatever things you have to at the end of the painting to complete the full composition. Now we're going to do the glazing technique. It's a little different. You'll see how it's going to be different. We're going to do a whole entire wash across the whole paper, let it dry 100%, and then come back and do other subsequent washes over the top of it. And that's what makes it different from Alla Prima. Alla Prima, you're just going in, you're starting in one place, and you're painting all throughout the painting. Here in the glazing technique, you'll see we're going to do subsequent washes one after the next on top of this paper, and you'll see how we do it. So let's start. First thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of ask ourselves, all right, it's going to be let's do our drawing first. I'm just going to do a real simple, I'm going to do a simple type of, it's going to be a city scene. So we're doing like a cityscape here. And then we're going to do maybe we're going to have some buildings. So we're having some buildings here. So these are the tops of the buildings. And then down here at the bottom, maybe we'll make let's make our border around our tape so we can kind of see our border more readily. Okay, so we have our border. And then over here we're going to have maybe the sidewalk, and there's like a little square here. There's some restaurants and things and some tables and people. So we'll make a couple tables, some oval tables, and we'll make some people. So I'm just going to make some shadows and some tables with some people. I just make a round circle for the body and then a smaller circle for the heads, for the people sitting. And then the bottom areas of the tables and the bodies, I don't really, we'll paint that in, but it's not, we just want to make sure we get the body and the head, the top of the body, like the shoulders and the heads. Let's get those in there like so. The rest we can kind of just blend into the sidewalk and the foreground here and all that. So there's some umbrellas here. So we'll have some umbrellas. And that's where the tables are, where the umbrellas are, and they're okay. So we're just doing a very loose feel for a streetscape where we're having lots of excitement. There's all kinds of great things going on, restaurants cooking beautiful meals, people out having it's a sunny day, maybe it's around late afternoon, people are having dinner enjoying a nice beer, some wine, some really delicious food, maybe some sodas and iced teas, whatever people like to drink. And then we have some, let's do a couple canopies over here. So we have some canopies where the people are dining. There's the restaurants where they have the restaurants there, where the doors are, and the people go inside and they eat inside too. Some people are eating outdoors here now, so they're having an outdoor meal. All right, so we just have a couple details there of that, and then maybe a few more canopies over here. And then there's some trees and stuff at the bottom of our scene. So we have some trees. I'm just doing a little sketchy kind of thing, you know, just getting some tree shape ideas. So we'll put some trees over here. We'll put a larger tree over here, some more trees over there. We've got lots of darks in here, so you're going to see we're going to have tons of darks down in this lower section here. And then there's going to be the sidewalks and plaza here, where we'll have some large plaza areas, and then we're going to have some figures. Maybe we'll have a figure over here walking. And maybe another figure over here walking. And that should be good. So we have a couple figures walking in from the left here, and then some restaurants over here and the buildings. And we're just going to make some windows on these buildings. And there's some interesting windows over here on this side of the building. And then up here, same thing. This building's closer to us, so we're going to see more of the details of the windows up here. And we just kind of keep working with the idea of some windows and some ornate stonework on the building, some bands of stone, like that. But again, we're just covering the glazing technique here, so we're just going to kind of show you the basic idea of it. So we're not going to get too involved with the composition of what we're doing here. We're just going to kind of show the basic ideas of the glazing technique, the basic process we're going to do for glazing. Okay, so that's the basic drawing of it. You don't have to get this involved. You can do something much more simple. That's fine too. But you can kind of see what I did here is quite simple. Sort of like a larger building, and I can even draw it on some scrap paper here, just to kind of make it a little more readable, because sometimes my pencil sketches do not come out so great on the video. So if I cover this with the Sharpie marker, so essentially, you know, we did the rectangles, so this is more of a portrait vertical style painting. So you have the two large shapes of the buildings here with the windows, like that. And then some more windows over here. And then down below here we have the canopies, like so. So we have some canopies, and then we have some oval tables. And then we just make some shapes of figures. We'll paint those in, but just people having lunch, and they're sitting, and then there's the tables and the shadows, and you don't really have to do much with the bottoms of the legs and the bottoms of the tables. You can cover that all with shadow, and you'll see how we do it, but for the most part, again, we're just doing the tops of the heads and the bodies for the tables, and there's some some triangle shapes for the umbrellas over the tops of the tables. And this is maybe early evening, very early, late afternoon. Everyone's having a wonderful time at the end of the day, having some meals, and you can kind of talk to yourself and have a fun time thinking of the scene and make little stories up in your mind. It's fine. You just have to get excited about it and think of the cool colors. And then here we're just going to do a larger shape here with a head and shoulders, and then another maybe shape here with some shoulders and head and shoulders and legs. And then over here. So we'll have two figures, and then some smaller, very, very small figures here, having lunch and dinner. And that's all. And that's the drawing, basically. And I just did it in pencil, obviously. Now, before we go on, let's take a quick break. I like to take breaks, as you know. If you've been watching me for some time, you'll always know I'm taking breaks between 15 and 20 minutes. I usually take a break, so that's what we're going to do now. I'll clean up my palette a little bit, and then we'll get started with the painting, and we're going to, again, do the glazing technique, and you'll see how the glazing technique is very effective for a scene like this. So we'll be able to do this scene very quickly. We'll get it done with beautiful washes of color, and you'll kind of see how it all works together as we go. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, we're moving right along here. Let's clean up our palette a little bit. So we did our first painting, of course. That was the Alla Prima painting with the palm tree. Now we're just going to wipe up the palette, get some of the colors up that we used before. We might use some of the same colors. Maybe we might not use all of them. So I just do a quick cleanup. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just the majority of the paint comes off. And then we're going to get into the first wash, the first glazing. So this is where the glazing technique comes in. Glazing technique is you're going to want to do a light wash over the entire paper and let it dry for maybe a half an hour to an hour, sometimes a little more. If you have a blow dryer, you can blow dry it off, quicken the process so that you can start back in again and start working on your second glazing over the top. But that's the difference between the Alla Prima and the glazing technique. When you're using the glazing technique, you're actually going to do a light wash over the entire paper, and that sets the tone for the rest of the painting. So you're going to use predominantly the same colors in your first wash, your first light wash. You're going to use those same colors over the top. Once that dries, you're just going to use thicker paint and less water. So the first wash you're going to do, the first glazing, is going to be a light wash. And we'll show you how we do it. So we're going to go here, and we're going to say, okay, let's do some blue for the sky. And we're going to have maybe some purple wash with some brown. So we'll have some kind of a building, some brown colors for the buildings, along with some orange. So here you're going to see I'm going to do some orange and some brown and some purple to get ourselves a nice kind of stone, cool stone type style looking wash colors. Here we're doing our blues and greens. Let's do some sky wash. Okay, like that. And we're going to add some extra water to it. You see how I'm adding those puddly bits of water? You want to have a light wash when you're doing your first wash here. You don't want to go with too thick a paint. So that's how you ensure you're going to get a nice light wash over the entire paper, is by using lots of water, not that much paint. So we're going to do the blue for the sky. We'll just start to put it on like so. I'm using a mop brush. That's another brush you probably will need to eventually. You can make do with something like this, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. So if you can get a mop brush like this, you can cover a lot of area. So we're going to cover this whole paper within a minute or two. All right, so we've started up here. We've got our sky color up here. You can add a little more interesting blue color, as you're going. You can go quick back in there and get a couple spots of more exciting blue. This blue here is a little more grayed down, which we saw here. Then we're going to go with some of this purple and brown for the building colors. And again, you're not worrying too much about the boundaries of your washes. You're just getting that light wash on. This is going to dry a lot lighter too. So just so we kind of see, we're going down the way here with our wash. And you can lighten up a spot if you see like you want a little more brighter spots of light in your painting. You might lift up a few with your tissue. And then you can make this spot right here a little lighter of this side of the building, where the buildings change and there's a different building, like that. And there's some pretty light looking awnings, so you can lift up some paint off the awnings if you see you want to have your awnings a little more brighter in color and darkness and lightness. So don't be afraid to use a tissue and lift up a couple colors here and there. And then here, let's do some blue, some more blue that we use for the sky. We're going to use that a little more grayed down blue over here for the foreground. And that's the glazing technique. This is considered a glaze, where you glaze the whole way down the paper. You put the whole wash on the paper. Maybe you add a little bit of that. There we go. Once you put that wash on, you don't want to really go over it anymore. So you just really want to do the wash one time with your mop brush, or you can use a larger brush, whatever you can use for your brush. But if you have a larger mop brush like this, you can get a lot more paint on really quickly, because that's what you kind of want to do. You want to get this wash on fast, and then you just let it set and let this dry 100%. And again, if you want to use a blow dryer, you can blow dry this and get it real dry quickly. I'm going to let this dry naturally maybe. Maybe I'll use a blow dryer a little bit too, but we'll come right back. But this is basically the glazing technique, the heart of the glazing technique. Your first wash is a light wash, lots of water, not too much paint. So we use some purple and some brown for the building colors. Not too much paint, lots of water. And you get that first light wash on, and then we're going to go over with darker washes, and you'll see how we're going to do that next. But we have to let this dry again 100%. So you want to, if you don't have a blow dryer, you're going to want to leave this for a couple hours, probably 2 hours. If it's the winter time, it might take a little longer than 2 hours. If it's summertime and it's really hot out, it might dry faster in wherever you're working. But for the most part, let this dry at least an hour or more. The main thing is you want to make sure it's completely dry to the touch. Okay, we'll be right back, and we'll start in with our second glazing, the darker glazings over the top of this one, okay? All right, we are still here. We're working right along. We're basically doing our glazing technique. We're explaining how there's basically two techniques in watercolor, glazing technique and Alla Prima technique. So we've been covering up to now the Alla Prima technique, and now we're shifting over towards the glazing technique. So now we're doing the first glazing on our glazing technique painting. And I let this dry pretty much. I did use the blow dryer a little bit. I have a blow dryer. I used the blow dryer to dry it up the rest of the way, but I did take a 20-minute break here, half an hour break. So it's pretty much, it was drying quite a bit, but the main thing is you can kind of know when it's dry when the paper's, for the most part, pretty flat. You won't want a lot of buckling with your paper. If your paper is really buckled a lot, like bumps, and then you know that it's not dry at all, and you really have to let it dry a lot more than that. So if you use a blow dryer or you let it dry another hour, it should be pretty flat, whether it's a blow dryer or you let it dry naturally without anything like a blow dryer. If you just let it dry and sit for a couple hours, it should be pretty flat. It should not be really bumpy and wavy, the paper. If there's a little bumps, a couple little tiny bumps here and there, that's fine. Depends how you taped it down and whatever. But for the most part, you want to have that paper where you can put your hand on it and you don't feel any wetness of the paper. It's all pretty much dry. So now, once you have it to that state, your paper, or it's dry to the touch, then you're going to get your paper towel, and you're going to make sure you mop up any. This is crucial. This is really important. You're gonna mop up any large puddles of water and paint from your first wash, your first glazing. You've got to make sure you get all of that out of your palette, because that'll just destroy your chances of getting some really beautiful darks in your painting. Because if your papers or if your paints are getting all mixed in with tons of water in your palette, you'll never have a good chance of getting rich, dark, beautiful, darker colors, because that water will just mix it down and make it watery. So that's why I say, once you're done with your first glazing, you use a lot of water. It's a light wash, so you use lots of water. Once you're done with that first wash and you're letting your paper dry, that's when you go in and you mop up all that water and paint right out of your palette and dry your palette out. Make sure you have no puddles of paint, no puddles of water in your palette. Crucial to remember, you have to have that really notated in some note paper and whatever you're doing, or if you can remember it, if you can just memorize it, it's fine. And then that's it. Now we're going in with the second glazing, the second part two, the second glazing. Now this glazing is going to be the darks of the painting and also the medium tonal values here and there. So you could use your mop brush again. So we'll use our mop brush again, and we'll do a little more of that same wash, brown and purple. A little bit of orange, a little bit of red. So we're going to want to get that warmed up nice. Purple, red, a little bit of red, a little bit of orange. Okay. And then we can start doing a little bit of the darker washes over here, where the trees are and so forth, and these darker areas. So that's where you're using your mop brush. These mop brushes, incidentally, they create nice points, so you can get really good sharp lines as you go. And then here we just mix it up. There's going to be some darker darks over here, but we're just sort of getting some medium tonal values going here. Sort of like, let's do some medium tonal values here. Get the paper wet. As we're going now, you can see we're making some wet marks on the paper, which is giving us some damp paper. And if we're going down in here with these medium tones, we can go over with darker wash. And that'll really look good if we can mix that in. So that's what we're looking to actually do, is we're going in with our medium washes first. Like so, and we're going to start going over the top of these in just a second. So this is our second glazing, basically. The first one was really light. Now we're doing our medium and darks at the same time. So here you can see we're doing some medium tonal values, some medium tones, like so. And then there's also some shadows under the tables where the people are eating, like that. And there's some, we could put a little bit of like that there. Now we're going to go right in and get even darker yet. Let's get darker darks in. Let's do our blue, purple, blue, brown, red. And some more red. Let's make it some really warm brown, red, and dark blue, and purple. And let's see how that comes out. Maybe a touch of black. Just a little bit of black. You wouldn't want to do too much black. And then now, look at that. You just touch those darks, and you can see how that follows the pattern. Does that make sense, how we're doing this here? You go in with your medium tone first, a lighter wash first, and then you kind of get your darker darks. You just touch the the darker wash, and it goes right where you want it to because you've already put in that medium tone. That's really the key. To get those darker washes in there, fuse them in as you go. Okay, and then you have your tables here. And we have our smaller, finer, very, very fine brushes. We'll do some more details with all the figures on these tables and things, but there's some umbrellas there, like that. And there's some darker darks over here. I'm going to make some greens with some trees. And then let's go with some greens for the trees. Greens for the trees with brown and green. And there's some more trees over here, so we can just then maybe some yellow for some orange and yellow for some more lighter. Splash those on. Orange and yellow, splash those on for the other parts of the trees. The lighter leaves and things, you don't want to go with a large brush like this and paint leaves. The leaves can be the splashing, so you make some splashing with the yellow and orange by just tapping your brush and getting a light wash and light representation of the leaves above. There you go. And you let it mix and mingle through there, like so. And as you leave everything like you have it here, we're going to have some more purple. Mixing up some purple shadow colors. So the shadow colors can go in now. So that might be some shadow colors coming across from the left. And there's figures here. Again, we're doing some figures. Some large figures in the foreground closest to us. Like that. And then we can go with darker darks here. So burnt umber, or darker darks, dark brown, purple, blue, brown. There we go. And we get some darker darks for the jacket. Let's say there's a nice jacket that person's wearing there. Same here, another jacket over here, and some. Then you can get some more washes up here just to darken it a little bit. See, I'm doing another wash up here, another glazing. And again, if it starts to get too watery, lift up some paint with your tissue. And let's go right up into there. There we go. So we're just fusing everything together in our second wash. We needed a little bit more darker wash on this area here where the buildings are. So to get that little bit of a darker wash, that's all you have to do is go in and add some of that darker paint like so. Like that. And that's all we have to do. So this is the glazing technique at its best, where you're adding lots of washes on your painting and you're going one wash at a time. You saw how we did this. So the first wash was that really, really light wash across the whole paper, and we let it dry 100%. You can't forget that. That's the one thing you can't forget. When you do that first wash, that light wash, that really, really light wash, you have to let it dry 100%. Then once you get that wash completely dry, then you're going over with your second wash. And with our second wash, you kind of saw how we did a medium tonal value, like a medium color wash, as we started to kind of start out a little bit mellow. And then we said, okay, yeah, now we're going to add the darker darks. And then we created a darker wash for those really, really dark shadows in the bottom here along the undersides of the canopies on these areas along the streetscape here, where there's the dining areas, the restaurants and so forth, and little areas where there's stores and storefronts and so forth, and people dining along where the restaurants are. So now we've kind of beautifully, with our second glazing, we've amalgamated and put all the washes together with that second wash, as we took our time and said, hey, let's go with some medium tonal values first, then we go in and do our darker darks, and we really got some really rich darks in there, like there along the bottoms of these and around the tops of these canopies along here, these storefronts. And then we even got our figures in over here in the front foreground of our painting with some really, really dark darks, which you can add some more color to it if you want. You can add some beautiful reds and oranges to your washes as you go, like that. Like so. And that's really, now we're going to let this dry again. This glazing is now done. Now your job is 100% complete for the second glazing. You have one more glazing to go, which is the final touch-ups to get everything looking 100% the way you want it to. So if you can imagine, your glazings are really three parts. Your first super light wash, let it dry 100%. Second wash, you're doing your medium and darker tonal values to get the main portion of your painting completed, the main thrust of your painting completed. And the last glazing we're going to do, once this is again 100% dry, whether you're using a blow dryer or you're letting it dry overnight, however you got to get it done, make sure that paper is really, really super dry after this wash. And then you do your final touches of interesting details, some windows, some small railings up on these window areas here on the building. We're going to do some more details on the figures. We're going to do the details of these people having their lunch and their dinner along this beautiful streetscape here. And so we're going to have all these things working in our favor. And you'll see that it's going to turn out absolutely fabulous once we let this dry and get our final wash. Our final glazing will be done once this one is 100% complete. So we'll be back in 10 or 15 minutes. I'm using a blow dryer. I'll blow dry this, keep it quick for myself so I can get onto some other chores I have around the house. But I'll get this done quickly with a blow dry. We'll come right back and we'll finish up our final details, and then you'll have basically the video that you can always go back to too. Don't be afraid to go back and use this video as like your guide to the Alla Prima versus the glazing technique, so you kind of see how both work, practice them both separately, and then eventually, after learning both of them really well, then you don't have to worry about it anymore, because you'll just naturally kind of know how to do your paintings. You'll look at a painting and say, well, I'll do this one Alla Prima. It looks more like it'll be easier for me in Alla Prima. Or you might say, oh yeah, this painting here I'm looking at, this picture I'm going to paint from, or if I'm outdoors, you'll say, oh, this one, yeah, I got to do this one glazing technique. It makes much more sense to do it with the glazing technique, this scene I'm painting. So you will know eventually which technique to use, for your main technique in your painting when you're going to do a painting in watercolor. But that's the thing, if you learn them both separately first, then you'll sort of understand better how to use both of them together, or if you're going to use one or the other, most likely, in a more strict fashion, you're using more of a glazing technique or a Alla Prima technique. Okay, so I'm just making sure I make plenty of good impressions on you that you have to learn both of these techniques. And then once you learn both of them, then again, you're going to have a lot more fun, a lot easier time painting. And so I'm giving you here the whole chock full of nuts information. I hope you love it. We're doing the whole enchilada of information of watercolor here on my channel. Please stick with me. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed, so you can keep coming, back and getting more videos. You'll be alerted when new videos come out, and especially if you hit the notification bell below. There's that little notification bell. That'll let you know that a new video's come out, so that you can jump on it right away and take a look at it and see if it's something you want to study up on or whatever. But in any case, we're going to come right back and finish up this painting. We're doing the glazing technique now, and you're going to see how this really just turns out beautifully as we finish up. All right, we're back and we're excited. Everyone, we're getting to that final stage now. We're going to do the very, very final bit of details in this painting. And we've taken you through each of the processes for the glazing technique, where we went with our first wash, let it dry 100% complete. We just did our second wash. You saw us do this. We got everything in, all of our darker darks, or some of our medium tonal values. We went back and added some darker medium tonal values to our buildings here to kind of get them a little more looking like they're closer to us, so that you have that sky wash in the background. So we're working the colors and the tonal values in the washes to our advantage. So this was the second wash we did with the medium and darker tonal values through here. You can see in the figures the darks and the dark shadows under the awnings, and across the street here some shadows, mystery shadows coming from somewhere. And you can see that. Now the final glazing after this is 100% complete. As far as dryness goes, we let this dry 100%, the second glazing. So now we're going to do our third glazing, which is the final glazings. And then you can do these with more of the smaller brushes. The brushes you can get a little more detail with, the finer details. I have the brush that comes with the praying set. Beautifully sharp point for the praying watercolor set. You have that. I also picked this up along the way, a number 6 Simply Simmons. And this one was like $4 or $5, and it's a little bit larger. You can put some more washes down. You get a little more coverage with this one. You can get a little more paint and washes out there on the paper. This one is a little less. This is more excellent for details. And of course, we did do the larger washes with a mop brush. So sometimes you have to go out and get a mop brush to get these larger washes in, because to try to do it with these two, it's not going to be doable. You have to actually have a mop brush, and this is a number 2 mop brush by Alvaro Castanet. He sells these on his website. He has a lot of great brushes on his website, so I encourage everybody, if you need a good mop brush, a great mop brush actually, to go to Alvaro Castanet, and you could just email me if you want, and I can send you his email address for his website. And it's a number 2 Alvaro Castanet, and you can get a nice mop brush. This will last you a long, long time. I've had this for 10 years or more, and it still works great after 10 years using it a lot. And so that'll last you for a long time. Get a lot of mileage from that brush. And then these two are good brushes too, you have to have, I guess, to start out with. So we'll get our darks here. Now we have the same washes that we were using here. We still have in our palette. We want to keep those in the palette. And then we can just do some more finer details here. So I'm going to do some of the figures here. And then you can add in some reds and blues, whatever you want to do. Oranges to make some interesting bits of color. So these are people having lunch and dinner along the tables here. And you can add a little oranges and reds to the canopies. Maybe a little green. So you can change around the colors. And you keep your tissue handy so you can blot up if you go too dark or something and you want to make sure you... And I'm just adding some wash to the canopies here. I might leave this one a little more. You could add a little more bits of color to some of your figures, like here, these two figures in the foreground. You know, I might make this figure with a black jacket, so I'll add some black paint, like so. And just, I'll bring that black right down into the foreground there and into the bottom where his legs are. And, you know, you can kind of make up your own. So there's some different, you know, you can make some darks and some lights. You could take some black, mix that in with some red, black and red. Kind of a warm black color. You can go under here and do some darker darks under here. So we're just doing our final glazes now. So you saw how we did all of the glazings we needed to get done. And you can add in some of those darks underneath the... And if you'll see, this will all blend in once it dries, but you can actually blot it up a little bit too. But I'm just adding some some darks around some of the areas around these canopies and underneath them. So that's kind of like a darker shadow feel underneath the canopies. And there's some darker darks up here too, so I'll add some darks here with that darker paint, the black and the brown mixed. And you can also take some orange and yellow and sort of, do a little bit of splashing to get some leaves, just that feeling of leaves here. You could do some yellow and that really light green, like that. Some yellow. Okay, and then I think our final bit of information on this would be our windows. So you could do your windows, and we have our railings. You can do some final details like that. Over here, it might be a little darker over here. These are closer to us, and then as this building over here is further away, we'll keep our details for that a little bit further away. We'll keep that lighter, so you can kind of see we're sort of keeping things minimal. Keeping things minimal. We don't want to keep doing, like, you know, too much details. Like that. That's good enough for there. And then for that distant bit of details here, let's just leave these here like this. These are very minimal, so we just want to, and you want to do them fast. Up here, you might have some. And then maybe some of our lines here we drew before. These are the plaza. We have the plaza. We have it could be some slate or stone patios. So if we put a couple lines out on the paper like that, you're going to automatically feel like that's going to read true to the scene. You have some patio blocks, people going to and fro. And that's it. So that's a nice glazing technique painting. And again, we covered both the Alla Prima and glazing technique. And as you remember, the main idea is with your Alla Prima, you're painting everything at one time. You just go in there and you start painting your tree and you get everything in. And that's Alla Prima, all painting all at one time, your subject matter. And then here, what we showed was here, the glazing technique is basically you're pretty much going in 3 goes as far as your glazings. You're going to do your first glazing super light, just a super light wash of color, blues and purples and browns, blue for the sky, and then purple and browns as you come down through here. Second glazing is you're doing your medium tonal values, and then also starting your darks in here. And then your final glazing is doing your final touches of super dark darks and some accents of nice, beautiful, rich colors. We added some greens and some reds here and there, and some reds and blacks to our figures to make things a little more exciting and have more of a tonal value range. So we have our super lights in the background, and as you get closer to the foreground, you're getting darker darks and shadows and all of the interesting things that go along here in the cityscape here along here. People having dinner, lunch along this little street scene here, and you have your beautiful canopies here that are lit by the sunlight coming into the scene. So I think you'll see that a scene like this, a cityscape scene, you'd want to do in the glazing technique, because that's really, you know, kind of really, it works as an advantage to getting it really done beautifully and rendered beautifully. And then here, if you're going to do just one tree, maybe in the landscape, you know, maybe you're doing a couple type scenes where you're just going to have a few things like a couple trees or a tree or a house or a building, just one building. Maybe you're going to want to do it in an Alla Prima fashion where you just paint the subject matter straight away, start it out and get it done all in one go. And then, you know, you might add in a few little light washes here and there. So those are the two. I hope you really had a great time watching this video, and I hope I explained it in a way that you can really understand and see the two differences between Alla Prima and glazing technique. And I hope you'll practice each independently so that eventually when you're creating your paintings and you're out on location, or if you're painting from anything from photographs or online, you'll be able to look at your subject matter and kind of decide which technique you're going to use more of. And also too, once you get used to both of them, you can interchange them and kind of use them together in the same fashion. You can use both of these together as you go through your painting. So I hope you had a great time. We're going to be back soon. And again, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because we're going to be doing great videos like this going forward, month after month, week after week, month after month, and year after year. We're here. We're covering all your watercolor techniques, methods, and we'll see you on the next video.